morning and welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
And we're here on a nice hot day in Bethesda, Maryland from our wonderful little studio, air quotes. Brian, before we get started, I want to welcome you back after a couple of weeks. You had quite an adventure as I followed on Facebook. You traveled, what is it, 8,200 something miles?
Right at 8,000 miles, went down and got my kids out of Baton Rouge. You know, they say, the thing about don't drive through the high water. We had to do it 3 times, and it's like I see why people do it, because you couldn't back up, you couldn't stay there, you had to drive through it, and then we ended up 111 degrees in the desert, 41 the next night in Northern California. It's crazy out west.
And then, but you have an SUV, so that helped a lot, right? In that
yeah.
kind of situation, and a lot of things too. Plus, you took in a lot of baseball games. So
That's right.
I'm living vicariously through you sometimes when you go to those baseball games, because I'm like, I'll never get my wife to go to none of these. But anyway, beyond that, we'll move from vacation to the news. So yesterday we had a couple of primaries, Florida and Arizona. They were being closely watched to see. John McCain was challenged in Arizona. Conservatives were hopeful that they would knock him off, but he won handily there. Marco Rubio, running for his seat, didn't have any problem there. So the interest really probably was on the Democrat side. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz won her contest. I think part of that, I think if Bernie Sanders people had actually put a little more effort into that, because they had started, but he kind of has disappeared. That kind of sealed the deal for her. She could actually go in and do this. But that was her first primary challenger ever, as I believe, right? And then I think one of the more interesting races is going to be that Representative Jolly. Is it David Jolly? He's going to be. He won, and so he's going to be facing Charlie Crist. So that'll be a hotly contested race in Florida. But if you're looking at from the Never Trumper side, I don't think they really won anything last night, did they?
I don't think they did either. I think this was, in the case of McCain and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Rubio, the well-known incumbent beat what's going on right now in all these things is, the presidential race is crowding out all the other news. So, McCain's challenger, she's a competent lady, but no one was watching. It's like, which one of these guys have I done before, And the same with Wasserman Schultz. That was what she did was a problem for Bernie. It wasn't really a problem for the people of her district. And, man, Bernie has zeroed out, right? Everything he was for, he seems to have abandoned.
Must be that $600,000 vacation home. He's like, hey, we should be having somebody go out there and take pictures and see if he's up there just having a good time.
He cashed in. That's what he did. He got his money, and, he's not poor. He's got a fresh suit now, and, new living room furniture, and he's good to go.
Yeah, and the thing about Arizona, I'm not going to belabor all of these things because we need to move on to other things. But in the case of Kelly Ward, like you said, she was very competent, very credible. If this had been, kind of 2010 or something like that, back when we more had a Tea Party rush, she probably would have stood a better chance of knocking McCain off. But there is none of that anymore. I mean, the Tea Party, who talks about the Tea Party except people trying to raise money for the Tea Party, which is all they seem to do is raise money for the Tea Party, not that anything's going on. Right. So, that kind of backlash or enthusiasm, energy, whatever you want to call it, I don't see that.
Yeah, there's really not right now a conservative movement. The standard bearer of the party, the conservatives have controlled for, since I guess the time of Nixon at least, has been taken over by somebody who's not really conservative, and so there's this reapportionment going on, and people are switching sides, and new coalitions are forming, old ones are dying off, and so there's not really that's not out there anymore.
Yeah, and the conservatives seem to be far less united. I mean, they really have fractured a lot during this election season. I mean, partly by dint of having 17 candidates or whatever, and then Trump kind of running the table on them and surprising everybody. Just a lot of things going on here that has been very unusual. But the conservatives, they are definitely very split. I don't know if I've really seen them this divided. I mean, I'll use even Paul Ryan as an example in the sense of to me in 2012. Everybody seemed to love Paul Ryan. Now, if I open up my web browser and look at the political reporting, their conservatives are just throwing. They're mad. They want him out.
They want him out. He hasn't had a chance to do anything good or bad yet. It's like,
Right.
you got to give it some chance, But the thing about it is, the ideas that underpinned the conservative movement are alive and well, and there are a lot of people behind them. And I think part of what is happening with Trump is that he's realizing there's a lot of votes there, and he is tacking that way.
Yeah. So we'll see. So the big news of the day too, probably the surprise news, at least as far as I can tell, I don't think anybody predicted this, is that Donald Trump has been invited and is going to Mexico, of all things.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I'd had a sombrero to wear today, but I'm sorry I don't. What do you think about this?
You know what? What it shows is that some professionals have gotten his ear during the campaign, and they're saying, "Hey, this is easily winnable," and it does appear to be. And but you go down to Mexico, what's going to come out of that? He's going to say, "Well, I have a better understanding of the issue," which gives him room to do this softening that he's been accused of doing. I think he's right. I've always thought that there's three big problems with immigration. One of them is, what do you do with the 11 million people already here? Kicking them out is not that good an option, but neither should you be rewarded for. We don't let the dope dealer keep the money, right? We take his money. So, something has to happen to where you are punished. And, he's playing with that in his mind, and people are talking to him. And, unlike, most politicians who have all this made up in their heads, and what they don't have made up in their heads, they're getting from consultants, carefully packaged messaging, this and that and the other. He's actually talking to people, and as he learns things, changing his mind. And, one place, you said this before, it's inconsistent. Yeah, it may be true, but, it also shows somebody willing to think about it in a new way, which I think is what voters are looking for.
Well, it's all about winning an election. He needs to do what he needs to win an election. I think his campaign advisors, I think those things, there's a lot of improvement in a lot of ways in his campaign after these last changes. And, heaven forbid, I guess, for him that there should be any more changes in the whole thing. So, but, it's interesting. I'm kind of curious as to, for those hardcore, anti-immigration people who've been supporting him, what are they going to be thinking after this trip to Mexico? Because he's kind of slightly moderated his position on this, are they going to stick with him because the alternative is Hillary, or are they going to pull back, not vote, or do something else?
Yeah, but and I'm not sure though how many people are. That's the issue, they vote.
Right.
It's like is it 1%, 5% who really like, man, if you're not hardline on immigration, forget it. And there's no one. They have no choice. There's no one any harder line on it than him, right? And I'm reading before we started the transcript of what he said last night. He had a rally in Everett, Washington, which is one of the places we went. And he talked about immigration in a very hardline, traditional Trump way, But he's learning to talk to both of these things. And what is the president of Mexico going to say about this visit, right? Is he going to say, this guy doesn't understand anything? No, he really can't afford to say that, So what he will say will at least be polite, So which Trump will, which will be a sort of pseudo sideline endorsement of Trump.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see some of the social media reaction. I also know that Vicente Fox, the former president, has blasted this move. He's not happy at all with this happening. But we have, one of my friends, Emily Zanatti Scouse, has said, maybe if he's there, they can build a wall and keep him in. And somebody commented on our Facebook page, it's like, well, Mexico will never pay for that.
Right.
So we're getting all kinds of jokes and things like that. My thing in the morning was like, so he's going down there to talk about wall finishes or something.
Right.
You can do a lot with this.
But it's outside of the box, which is what he is and what people seem to want. I think it's an interesting move, and I think doing it before his speech, so he can come back and whatever he says in that speech, he can say, well, after talking with the president of Mexico, the guy who shares this problem with us, the guy who deports anyone found in his country, right, illegally, this is what I've come up with, and I think it adds credibility to what he says. It is a hustle move, we talk about it in sports, hustle baskets, hustle plays, this is a hustle play, and, his opponent's not doing it.
Well, and that's exactly right. That was
somewhere
actually
taking a nap.
That was what I was going to say, was that in some ways it's almost like a preemptive strike on Hillary. Hillary's planning on trolling. Apparently she is set up a series of Trump's tweets in chronological order and has put them out. And she plans to troll him during this speech and everything that all the stuff that he's going to go do in Mexico. But I think he's this
have someone trolling. She'll be asleep.
Yeah, right. The thing is that as a result of that, though, is that it seems like it's kind of caught the Clinton campaign flat-footed because she should be there. I mean, if she she really ought to be doing something like that. He's going down there doing. I think this could have a huge positive effect on his campaign.
That's right.
So that's very.
She can't explain it away, and now if she does it, it's copycat.
Right. Yeah, I did it because he did it.
Yeah.
All right, quickly, just thoughts about one of the surprise announcement that came out in the last couple of weeks was Ed Fulner, the former president of Heritage Foundation.
My former boss.
Yeah, he is joining the Trump transition team. I can't say that I ever saw that coming.
They are doing some stuff over there. They're helping him a little bit with vetting people and so forth for administration. Obviously, they gave him the list of the judges. He is asking Heritage. What would the conservative movement want me to do here, right? It doesn't mean he will do it, but he is asking the question. As for Fulner, I think that's a huge get because there are a lot of people, including many people with huge checkbooks, who really respect Fulner and what he says and what he stands for and what he's done all these years. And, to have him, helping you with transition, and Heritage is careful to point out, transition is not campaign, right? He's not going out working for him. He's saying, I'm going to get him ready to where if he wins, the transition is smooth. Okay, that's a different role, but I think it's a huge get for him. And I think it's a huge, Trump's battle, as we talked about before, is to not seem crazy, right? Not seem loopy. Well, Fulner helps him. Fulner gives him good credentials.
Yeah, I mean, Fulner has got an incredible amount of gravitas.
Right.
And his influence, and I'm sure there are a lot of people at Heritage that wish he was still there for a lot of reasons. But Fulner he's an intellectual heavyweight for me, in the conservative movement. He's done, his track record is
impeccable.
Really impeccable. And as a result of this, I think you can not only sway the people that have got the large checkbooks, but also those people that have been maybe on the fence a little bit about this. Is that, Ed Fulner is a guy I really, really respect. I think I can understand this now a lot better. So that was a huge get. Switch from that to Trump's spokeswoman, Katrina Pearson. She's had a few fumbles recently and can't quite seem to get her facts straight.
Math is not her strong suit.
Yeah, I'm just, and the last thing, which I mentioned as we were talking before the show started, was just where she was, on this whole Trump position on Mexico when he kind of made this shift a little bit. She's on CNN and out there, and she's saying that he changed his words but not his position. And it has everybody's head scratching. It kind of just makes me wonder, why is she still there? I mean, what is she bringing to the table for him exactly? An attractive face or something? I don't know.
She is utterly indefatigable. I mean, I've never seen anybody that faced the wind as much and as long as her and argue with whoever for however long, and I mean, she beats you she exhausts you,
That's true. I will give you that, yes.
You give up, you go away, you need rest, like Hillary. But she is, she obviously doesn't know. He has a lot of people doing this who have never been in those positions before. And she's one of them, like Kellyanne Conway, respected pollster, well-known Washington person, but she's never run a presidential campaign. The other people, Lewandowski, he was a congressional aide. He's not, so he's elevating people and he is getting a fresh set of ideas. And some of those ideas, like I read the Post this morning, there was a piece about all Trump surrogates and all the things they had said and so forth. But it's like, if you're looking at this through the traditional lens, it doesn't look right. But what he's trying to do is say, we don't need the traditional lens. The traditional lens is what got us where we are.
And that has probably befuddled the media to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think you're right about, I will say this about Katrina Pearson is that, it doesn't really matter how much you argue with her. I mean, whether or not you're the liberal reporter, the conservative, anchor, whatever, she doesn't waver from this. I mean, she holds forth and she doesn't give an inch.
Right.
She knows what she's supposed to do. So maybe in a sense, and now that I'm thinking this through, is that she might actually be the best campaign spokesperson we've seen from that angle. If you look at it from that lens, Others have wilted in other
Yeah,
campaigns,
yeah.
and she definitely hasn't.
She can out Baghdad Bob, Baghdad Bob.
All right. Now, here something else I wanted to bring up because it's been in the news is this whole issue of Hillary's health and Trump's health. There were a lot of things that floated around on the internet, which I always thought, people please take a deep breath when you see these pictures of Hillary and things like that. The only reports I've seen, were showing that she had good health, but this was like a one-page document. We've had something similar from Trump. Now, Trump has challenged her to release more extensive medical records, and he said he will do the same. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that the public should see that for both candidates?
Well, I mean, both of them will be in their 70s for most of their term. So, yeah, it has some relevance. Are we electing Tim Kaine? Are we electing Mike Pence? We kind of need to know. And he seems healthier, and she seems to have more trouble, and it seems to be that he struck a nerve with them. The way her campaign has responded to this, they are defensive about it, and they can't stop looking defensive about it. And so, I think it may not. You could say every election should they have to, produce a form that says good at heart, good at lungs. I don't know, but this time, yeah, I think it's an issue she needs to get out in front of if she can't. It may be that she can't. It may be that he's on to something and she's really sick.
Yeah. So yeah, and
the pictures of her and the clothes she's wearing suggest that her view of her is changing, right? And why would her view of her change? We don't know, but this is certainly a possible explanation.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned hiding. So speaking of hiding, let's talk about
and
sleeping. Let's talk about press conference or the lack thereof. So this is becoming a huge issue for Hillary. It's now, by my count, I think now we're up to 270 days. I mean, 9 months, basically, since she held a press conference. It was December 4th or 5th of last year.
That was the one at the UN, right?
No, that was in March. That was before that. This one was actually in Iowa. The last one she did was in Iowa, and she hasn't done so. So, even the liberal media, I mean, they're frustrated. Yeah. There was a report this morning, and I'm going to write about this a little bit later, but it was really kind of funny. Nancy Cordes from CBS did a report on the release of these 30 more emails that may be related to the Benghazi thing. But as they rolled into this part of the segment, the report on her press conferences, Cordes basically, she said that she's too busy hiding to insult the reporters.
Right.
We're getting this. We get Howard Dean coming out on MSNBC and saying she doesn't have to do press conferences because the press isn't legitimate. Therefore, they're asking illegitimate questions. Chris Jansing, who I don't think has ever been a conservative, and she's like, "What are you saying?" I mean, it's just funny. It's kind of funny to watch the liberal media react. They can't get her on the record for anything.
They're defending things they've never had.
Yeah,
to defend
no,
before.
it's just weird.
And so, and the thing about it is, it's she's had interviews. She's had 300 interviews. Her MOOC set, right? Her campaign guy. But they are, you turn in the questions in advance. It's one person. If she doesn't want to answer that question, she's going to mess up your tape, right? So they're not live. They're taped, and she's going to say, "I'm not answering that question." Okay, cut. We go back and ask another question. We edit that out, right? So, but this is freewheeling, and one question may lead to another, and one guy over here may hear something that got said over there, and now he wants to know this. So you have to have command of the details, a plan going in, and you have to be able to tell the truth. And none of those things really apply to her, right? If you listen to her answers to questions, she states the problem, basically, and she states the arguments. One side says this, the other side says that. Okay, which side are you, and what will you do? That's harder to get at, and she won't say that. And so these people will be demanding. They're trained people. They're not, TV hacks. They're not former, New York Giant football players, right? They're trained journalists. This is what they do. And she won't stand for that scrutiny, and it's raising questions, and it should raise questions because – Chris Cillizza had a piece yesterday in the Post. He goes, this could foretell that her administration will not be that transparent.
Right.
I'm like, really? So, like all the emails, setting up a server before she became Secretary of State, all the things that have been hidden, the bleach bit or whatever it is that wipes out every bit of your email, not even God can read them. That didn't tell you that you have a problem with transparency here, right? But this does. I mean, okay, whatever it takes to bring you to church, right? But, she can't. The reason she won't answer the questions is because she can't.
Right, and it goes back to you say the truth, and it is Celiza talks. And media talks about there is a lack of transparency with her on these issues, but she can't. She can't answer these questions that she doesn't know about in advance. What I thought was interesting was that when Steve Kornacki used it as the most important number of the day, and he used the press conference number, and then he referred to the NPR having counted 350 press events or interviews that Clinton has done. 65 of those were with non-journalists, and a majority of those still were 3 to 8 minutes. These controlled settings, like you mentioned. So everything is very controlled. Where she falls down, is the UN thing. We saw how badly she performs there. And then when she did the black journalist, Hispanic journalist thing, she went ahead and took some questions, and she got a couple of questions about the email thing. And then she talked about that Chris Wallace interview, and she said she short-circuited the answer, which created a whole other firestorm of other things about, what's her thinking process and everything like that. So this is not a person who does well at that. And the thing is that, there's nothing that forces her to do that. The media is trying. I think the media really is trying because they want some questions answered for themselves. But there's nothing that says you have to do it. She says we're going to do one at some point, which can be whatever. We're going to get to like 339 or 40 days or something like that, to the election, and we probably still won't see one. And there's no guarantee, even if she wins the election, that she would even hold a press conference after that. Right. She might hold something for 10 minutes really quickly, do some laudatory, congratulatory thing. But, if they start asking those other questions, it's very easy to walk out of the room.
Right. And that's all that's going to ever happen now. Because, she's learned that, she's leading without having to talk to the press.
Right.
Now that will not go on forever, because at some point people expect answers. You cannot stonewall forever.
All right, so talking about her a little bit more, too, and there's also been a lot of calls from Democrats and other liberals for the Clintons to cut ties with the foundation. The New York Times just did an editorial basically saying, now, it didn't tar Hillary totally, because it said, they couldn't find a pay-for-play in there, and that was their interpretation. But they easily said that the email showed that that the foundation or people with the foundation did ask for access or favors for the donors while Hillary was Secretary of State, and then Bill has this role, and they really are asking the questions like, you talk about what you will do if she gets elected, that you're going to stop accepting foreign donations, things like that. There are times of saying, for transparency, for ethical purposes, do it now. Why not do it now?
Why were you doing this as Secretary of State?
Right.
You sold access. It's bribery. It's you're paid to take meetings. You have to pay to take a meeting. You have to pay for outcomes, right? And there were outcomes. Bahrain was an outcome. Some visas she approved and so forth were outcomes that she delivered for contributions to the Clinton Foundation. If it's you can't do it as president, I don't understand why you did it as Secretary of State. Their thing was, and I worked for Tom Davis, and he talked about this some too. It's not a get rich quick thing. It's easier to get rich once you get out of politics than while you're in it. Okay, so she was in and he was out, and it was kind of the perfect storm. So I think she has a problem with it. I think they should have cut it a long time ago. I don't see how it goes on if she's president with them in control.
All right. Well, I'm going to segue from Hillary Clinton, all that stuff, to transgender bathrooms.
Okay.
No comment. No. So Target Corp, we had this discussion earlier, and they've been in the news. They decided they were going to have, that you could go into any bathroom based on how you felt, what your gender was, your gender identity. Sales have, we're off. Overall sales fell 7.2%. They were 2.2% off in the last quarter. They seem to be feeling the heat. Now, they won't admit that this has anything to do with the bathroom law, but at the same time, when they announced their earnings a week or so ago, they said they were going to spend $20 million so that there would be a bathroom for transgenders in essence. And they already had some in the stores. They already had, like, I guess, the parent bathroom or whatever, and they'll convert that. But the other ones, over the course of the next 6 months, 9 months, whatever, will be converted. That's $20 million. That's a lot of money in my mind.
Down too.
Yeah, and they're basically saying, we're sticking to this, but now it's going to cost us this.
They're doubling down on being countercultural.
Yeah, you're right, and I mean, I think that also speaks to the fact that they have been hurt by this.
Yeah, out west, okay, almost everywhere I went, there was 2 bathrooms, neither marked, single use, only one person at a time. But there were 2 of them. There was a line, whichever one opened first. That was it.
Yeah.
They've solved it. They've moved on. You're the only one in there. What difference does it make?
Lock the door. You're fine.
Lock the door. Now, the thing about Target is, everybody's trying to find a way home on this, right? But they are publicly going out of their way to say, hey, look at us. We're whatever on this issue. We're enlightened, okay? And so people are saying, well, that's not what we want in a department store, and I send my kids off to whether that fear, people, it's not a justified fear. It doesn't matter what you think is justified, It doesn't.
Yeah. All right, so we're running up against time here. So quick comment on San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick.
Well, first of all, you never see that happen in baseball, right? Baseball, openly patriotic, all the players, all the management. Okay. Second of all, my thing has always been your freedom of speech ends where your boss says it does, right? Unless you go get another job. His bosses are mumbling. His bosses need to come up with a coherent yes or no. And if they go yes, then, football will face the prospect of, 2/3 of the league's African American, right? So you could have half the team sitting down, okay? What if half the teams are sitting down? Do you play the anthem then? What do you do? So I think the NFL, again, Roger Goodell, he's going to take his time, drag his feet, but, I think that's where that has to come from.
Yeah,
one way or the other.
And I thought what was interesting is that that great politician, thought leader, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, said in the Post today that he thought that Colin Kaepernick actually was the real patriot, basically. So you kind of understand where he's coming from, but I'm just like, okay, it's been an interesting thing. I mean, he's definitely taken a lot of backlash. He's going to suffer the results of this. But thing too is that his on the field performance hasn't justified him being on the field too much, and
right, and he could be cut in the next day or so.
Right,
they're saying
that could happen
on merit alone.
Right, that could happen. All right, 2-minute warning. You give yourself a little bit of time here.
2-minute warning. The big news is from Baton Rouge. The Nick Tullier, the cop who was wounded, has begun to respond to some commands. They told him to go thumbs up. He went thumbs up. They told him to shake his toes. He shook his toes. His father has a long piece on there this morning saying that he is this doesn't mean he's awake. This doesn't mean he's conscious, but it does mean that he's connecting with us in a way that he hasn't before. Tremendous news. If you're one of the people, I've asked a lot of people to pray for him. If you are one of those people, please keep it up. It appears to be doing some good.
That is wonderful news indeed. So I'll end on maybe a little bit of a lighter note. One of the things I didn't get to here today was the former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, is going to join Dancing with the Stars cast. We'll also have the infamous Ryan Lochte will be there. Now, I will say this. I used to watch Dancing with the Stars for years, and then at one point it's like, how many times can I watch the B and C and D actors and all those personalities, celebrities do this stuff? I may have to tune in to see Rick dance, but the first vision that comes into my mind is Tucker Carlson, when anybody in the political realm gets in there, and I don't think this is going to end well. So, but it would be amusing.
That's right. They'll get at least a couple of shows.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to continue to follow us on social media. And until next week, this has been the Bias Buzz.
Bullseye.